feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody...
The letter that never reached her, when Taehyung became the keeper of Jungkook's truth. In the kingdom of K-pop, where the lights dazzle brighter than constellations and applause thunders louder than storms, every stage feels eternal. The cameras capture everything, or so we believe. But there are always corners untouched by light, shadows where truths remain folded away like fragile letters unsent. And in one of those shadows lived Jungkook's most delicate secret. A letter that was written but never delivered. The world never saw it. But one man did. His name was Kim Taehyung. The Notebook of Silence. It was an ordinary night in Seoul when Taehyung walked into Jungkook's practice room. The air smelled faintly of dust, paper, and sleepless hours. The desk lamp glowed weakly, casting its light on a leather-bound notebook, left open as though abandoned mid-thought. Taehyung hesitated. He had no intention of prying. But the words lay bare, waiting, like a wound that begged to be witnessed. On the page, Jungkook had scribbled lines not meant for music. If I could, I would fold myself into an envelope and reach you. But even paper is braver than me. Even silence speaks louder than my heart. Taehyung's breath caught. He closed the notebook carefully, but the words had already carved themselves into his memory. He didn't need to ask who the you was. He didn't dare. The weight of knowing. From that night onward, silence carried a new gravity between them. When Jungkook laughed, Taehyung saw the heaviness beneath. When Jungkook sang, Taehyung heard the fracture in his voice. When Jungkook fell quiet, Taehyung felt the letter echoing in the room. They never spoke about it. But sometimes Jungkook's eyes lingered on Taehyung as if to ask, "Did you read it?" And Taehyung's steady gaze answered, "Yes. And I will carry it with you." The piano confession. One late evening, long after rehearsals had ended, Jungkook sat at a grand piano, fingers pressing hesitant chords that dissolved before becoming melody. Without looking up, he whispered, "Hyung, what if the world knew I wrote letters I never sent?" The words hovered in the air like a fragile balloon. Taehyung, leaning against the wall, swallowed hard. He wanted to say, "Then let the world know. Or don't. You don't owe them your heart." But the truth stuck in his throat. Because sometimes protecting someone means not answering at all. So he gave Jungkook silence, gentle, steady, unwavering. And in that silence, Jungkook's fingers found the courage to play again. The Weverse night. Months later, army around the globe witnessed a different kind of Jungkook. In a dimly lit video, hood pulled low, eyes red and swollen, his voice trembled as he whispered to the camera, "I want to be honest. It's time for me to speak." Fans wept, thinking he was speaking to them. They believed this was a gift, his raw, unfiltered heart. But Taehyung, sitting in the same room just outside the camera's frame, knew better. Jungkook wasn't speaking to millions. He was speaking to one. To the name he could never say. To the person who would never hear. When the world cried, Taehyung's tear was the first to fall. Quiet. Invisible. But heavy enough to carry a brother's grief. The empty seat. The world noticed the empty chair at Jungkook's concerts, roped off, decorated with white flowers, never touched. They thought it was Jungkook's idea, a poetic gesture for ARMY or for lost dreams. But it wasn't. It was Taehyung's. "Leave the space," he had said quietly one night. "Not for us. Not for them. For you. For her. For the silence that almost swallowed you whole." And so the chair appeared, performance after performance, a sacred reminder, an unspoken confession. Every time Jungkook sang "Still With You," cheers softened into sobs. And every time Taehyung's gaze drifted toward the chair, not because he knew the whole story, but because he had once read the letter. He had once seen the trembling boy behind the world's golden voice. The sky letters. When ARMY created sky letters, thousands of blue paper birds carrying messages into the night sky, Jungkook appeared silently among them. No makeup, no spotlight, just a boy with an envelope he never opened. Beside him, Taehyung sat unnoticed, mask and cap hiding his face. He didn't need cameras. His role wasn't to be seen, it was to see. As the birds rose into the sky, Jungkook's grip on the envelope tightened until his knuckles turned white. And Taehyung, watching closely, understood, Jungkook wasn't holding paper. He was holding memory. A memory too stubborn to leave, too sacred to share. The door never closed. At a Tokyo concert, Jungkook performed an unreleased song called "The Door I Never Closed." The lyrics, raw and trembling, pierced the night. I still leave a light. For you who didn't come home. I keep the sound of your footsteps. In the corridor of dreams I never closed. The audience wept. Clips flooded the internet. Critics called it his most vulnerable performance. But Taehyung, watching from the side of the stage, clenched his jaw. Because he had heard those lines months earlier, in the quiet of Jungkook's room, written in that same trembling notebook. He wasn't just hearing a song. He was watching a wound finally bleed in public. The exhibition of echoes. When HYBE opened Echoes of You, an interactive exhibition dedicated to Jungkook's artistry, fans walked through hallways of unfinished lyrics, whispered recordings, and heartbeat sounds. At the final wall glowed a single line. Have you ever loved so deeply that you couldn't even say its name? Thousands cried before it. But Taehyung, wandering quietly among them, stood still, hands buried in his pockets, eyes wet behind his mask. Because unlike the fans, he hadn't just read the words. He had heard them first, spoken in a trembling whisper on a night when silence was louder than any song. The keeper of the letter. History will immortalize Jungkook as the man who sang his heart into existence, the idol who healed millions with melodies. But between the lines of history lies another truth. Taehyung carried what Jungkook couldn't. He carried the silence. He carried the letter that never reached her. He carried the burden of knowing without ever asking. And maybe that was love too, not the love that sings but the love that keeps. Epilogue. Every encore ends the same way. Lights dim, crowd roars, Jungkook approaches the empty chair. He bends down, closes his eyes, and smiles faintly as if greeting someone unseen. Fans see devotion. But Taehyung, watching from the shadows, sees the truth. He sees the letter folded in a notebook that will never leave the drawer. He sees the silence between the lines of every lyric. He sees the boy who once asked, "What if the world knew?" And maybe one day the world will. But until then, the letter remains unsent. The song remains unfinished. And Taehyung remains, the witness, the keeper, the silent guardian of Jungkook's truth. Because sometimes love isn't about being the beloved. Sometimes it isn't even about being the singer. Sometimes love is about being the one who stays in the shadows, who sees, who remembers, when no one else can. And as long as Jungkook sings, Taehyung will remember the silence before the music. For silence too has its own kind of eternity. The story of Jungkook's hidden love will never truly end, because some truths are not meant to be closed like books. They linger like echoes in empty rooms, like lights left burning in corridors where no footsteps return. And yet, what makes this story unforgettable is not only the love that Jungkook carried, but the silence that Taehyung protected. He was not the one who sang, not the one who received the letter, but the one who stood guard when silence almost swallowed the song. In every performance, in every trembling note, Jungkook turned pain into melody. But behind those melodies was always Taehyung, watching, remembering, carrying the weight that no lyric could ever fully explain. Perhaps that is why their bond feels different. Not built only on laughter or friendship, but on the heavy, fragile secret they both carried together. One is the singer, one is the witness. And maybe, in the end, that is what love looks like. Not always in romance, not always in confessions, but in the quiet presence of someone who never leaves, even when the words are too heavy to say. The empty chair at Jungkook's concerts, the sky filled with paper birds, the glowing words at Echoes of You, all of them are symbols the world remembers. But Taehyung remembers something deeper, the night he read the letter, the silence that bound him to Jungkook's truth. When the lights fade and the crowd roars, the world sees an idol bowing to fans. But Taehyung sees a boy who still keeps an unsent letter locked inside his heart. And he knows that letter will never reach her, but its weight will never disappear. So Taehyung remains in the corner, in the shadows, not as the beloved, not as the audience, but as the keeper. And sometimes, keeping is the purest form of love. The world may one day forget the details, may drown the truth in noise and speculation. But Taehyung will not. He was there the night silence spoke, the night a hidden love almost broke, the night Jungkook let his truth slip through trembling lips. And that is why this story is not just Jungkook's. It is Taehyung's too. The world hears the song, but he remembers the silence before it. And in that silence, love continues to live, not seen, not spoken, but eternal.
Don't ask questions, shut your lid. I need to run away from this and go get off the grid. Feel like my brain is overloaded, man, I'm losing it. Don't let them tell you what to do, man, they don't know.